Okay, it's 11 o'clock, so I assume we are good to start. And I'm JC St Amour, President and CEO of Vanstar Mining Resources. We're here today to have a webinar on to update everyone on the resource estimate that was just updated at Nelligan, the Nelligan project in northern Quebec. And I think everyone here is a participant, and you can answer or ask questions, when by typing them in. You should be able to see a little Q&A button at the bottom or somewhere on your screen. And from there, you can type in some questions. And at the end of the presentation, I can answer anything you ask. Just with respect to the details that we can get into, we can't get into more technical details that's in the press release. For that, we have to wait for the 43101. Which will be another few weeks here before it's completed and published. So once that comes out, you can get a lot more details, and that will probably answer more of your technical questions if you're more inclined on the technical side of things. So with that, we'll just start the presentation here. We're going to have some, just a cautionary statement that there are forward-looking statements potentially in here, and if there are, you'd have to treat those with, with caution. So with respect to the Nelligan project, with this update here, we're truly, it's truly becoming one of the largest gold projects in Quebec. It's, and in Canada for that matter, with over 5 million ounces of combined indicated and inferred resources. It's truly becoming a very large project. The latest update defined higher quality indicated ounces of 2 million ounces at 0.85 grams per ton. And that's on top of inferred resources of 3.2 million ounces at 0.88. The key note for this project is that it's not finished growing. We can clearly see some areas that resource additions can be made, and I'll walk you through that. And then even beyond that, the project itself has not been closed off in any direction yet. It's still open along strike. It's still open at depth, and even within the pit itself, there are areas where resources could be added. And the project is near infrastructure, which is ideal for or which will be helpful for the development of the project in reducing capital costs. The project is, just as a reminder, is located south of Chibougamau in northern Quebec. Chibougamau itself is about 700 kilometers north of Montreal by paved road. Also about 300-400 kilometers from Val d'Or and Rouyn-Noranda to the east, which are mining towns and with a lot of expertise. And from the paved highways, we have access to forestry roads that are well maintained and carry heavy equipment daily as these are, operational roads. We also have power lines, high voltage power lines run through this area, including one that runs past or through our property package. And, we have access to railroads nearby, airports, a workforce. Chibougamau is a mining town. There's been a number of mining operations in this area for a long time. And it's accessible year-round. With respect to the resource, this latest update grew the resources by 63%. We had previously 3.2 million ounces in the inferred category. That's still the case. And then on top of that, we've added higher quality. We've added higher quality indicated ounces, and which have a higher degree of confidence to them. So all in all, this is a great increase in the resource. For those who are, may want to question what happens at different cutoff grades, you can see here we've provided basically a table of the resources at different cutoff grades. You can see exactly what happens, say at 0.5, which is where the 2019 resource was calculated. At that level, we're at about a 4.5 million ounce resource at over a gram. So if you want to compare apples to the previous resource, then you know, the 0.5 cutoff is where it was. We've added significant ounces since then. And then, you know, as this project is getting bigger and has more economies of scale, obviously the economics improve with that. And that is what leads to the reduction in the cutoff grade, which means you can mine more material, access more gold profitably. So that's a number that was determined by SRK, which calculated the resources, and SRK is an independent consulting firm, obviously a significant mining consulting firm, well respected in the global mining community. I'd like to add too that the resource additions here from 2019 were added with only 22,000 meters of drilling. That's you know, so it just goes to show that you can add significant ounces here without large programs. The entire amount of drilling that's been done on this project to date is about 80,000 meters, give or take. And with that, we have over 5 billion ounces of gold. So, you know, you can compare that to other projects like, I don't know, Windfall, where they have well over 1 million meters of drilling right now for ounces that are on sort of the same order of magnitude. So here, you know, with the bulk tonnage sort of profile of this, you can add quite a bit of ounces with you know, relatively small drill programs. You know, the resource is also robust, as you can see here, like at different cutoff grades. You know, it still hangs together no matter what you do. You know, you don't, you know, even if you drop the cutoff grade to even further, you don't necessarily add a lot of ounces. And if you lower or increase the cutoff grade, you don't lose a lot of ounces either. And that just is a testament to the fact that the gold here is distributed fairly evenly and well disseminated throughout this deposit. Just taking a look at the block model, this compares the 2019 pit shell, which is in the gray here. And my apologies, I think my cursor looks really small to everyone, so I'll just use little arrows here. Just give me a sense. So the 2019 pit shell is right here in the gray, basically surrounds this area right here. And the 2022, so the current pit shell is now the area in black that you see here outlined. Now, in the top version of this, you see sort of the gold grade distribution. So you can see that there, you know, how the you know, the sort of the darker colors are higher grade, basically. And you can also see that outside of the pit here, this significant grade that, you know, good grades that fall outside of the pit. Anything that falls outside of the pit is not in the resource calculation. And so you can see that these are areas that we can easily go after. We know these things exist because there are drill holes there. Those drill holes are just maybe a little too far apart to make it into sort of a pit calculation into the block model. And actually at the bottom here, you do see, sorry, you do see the blocks from the block model and the blocks that are outside of the pit. So if we look at sort of this area at the bottom here, all of these areas here that you see out here are outside of the resource calculation. And these, like I said, are areas that we know contain gold, decent gold, as you can see from some of the grades over here. And that all they need is an extra few drill holes here to basically add ounces to this pit. And you can kind of see the relative sizes of these blocks relative to what's inside the pit. So you can kind of imagine that there's significant resource additions possible here from what you can from what we can see. The resource obviously was expanded to the west. So from the 2019 pit shell, we have you know, most of the expansion went to the west and also to depth. And a bit to the east here as well. In the east, over here, we have the, you know, a small amount of resources that was basically came from historical resources that were drilled from before, you know, before, say, Vanstar and IAMGOLD had the project. But there are ounces there. There's significant also growth potential outside of what we know here. In sort of the west, for example, these drill holes all intercepted gold. They don't, this one to the very west obviously has gold intercepts, and it's not cut off yet. So there's potential to expand even further west. The zones are more narrow over here, but there's potential to add to this pit potentially. Likewise in the east, in these areas, there's not a lot of drilling, and east of that as well. And also I want to point out that within the pit, like right here, for example, you can see a space between, between the block models over here. And that's partly a function of not having a lot of drilling here, mainly because there's a small lake that just prevents access. But as soon as this can be drilled, obviously that will add ounces within this pit shell as well. So there are multiple ways here to grow this project. This project is not done growing. And we should see, with future drill programs, significant additions here as well. Also, at depth, for example, we still have quite a bit. It's still open down here, so there's potentially quite a bit that can be added here at depth. The strip rate, if you look at this, you can kind of see that the strip ratio isn't necessarily very high. You can see blocks here pretty much everywhere with decent grades. So it's a relatively low strip ratio. So even as you go down and lower the pit to add this material to the underneath the pit here, you wouldn't necessarily increase the strip ratio significantly. So now we have to do the to drill it to do that, but you can kind of see how the pit can continue to expand at depth here and still be economic. And I can show that in a cross section here. We'll go to the next screen. My apologies here. I just have to. There we go. Okay, let me erase these arrows. My apologies for that. But here we can see the cross section, the deposit in cross section from a previous news release that we had earlier last year. And you can see that, let me just go back to this arrow here. As the pit gets deepened, like this is the 2019 pit shell, but you can imagine that as this pit gets deepened to capture all the material down to this point, for example, and comes across this way, you're adding a bit of waste on this side, for example, but on this side, you're still capturing all these additional zones over here. So these zones allow this pit to be lowered and the strip on this side not to necessarily increase. So there's room to go deeper here. And obviously we've had some really good drill results here with these particular holes that were drilled last summer. And so it shows, sort of improving grades, and so there's more to do and more to discover here as we go lower. Sorry, I'm just trying to erase this and then get back to the, there we go. And then on top of that, so IAMGOLD has announced a 10,000 meter drill program on this project for this year. So that'll be the main work done here. The purpose of that will be to expand the resources. That's a primary focus. And that will be done by drilling areas that I just sort of pointed out, where we have the low-hanging fruit, where we have blocks that you can see at depth underneath the pit or outside the pit. So those can, with a little bit of drilling, can add to the resources within or expand the pit shell and add to resources. And then likewise at depth and along strike, there are, sort of, I don't want to say easy ounces, but there are, higher probability ounces to be found in these areas, lower risk. And then as part of that drill program too, there are other areas within the property boundary, the broader property boundary, where there are some targets to go after. And I think IAMGOLD may drill one or two of these targets. If you can see here on this regional map, we can see some regional structures, and we're talking about tens of kilometers here. So they're large structures that cover large areas. And so you see the Nelligan shear zone, for example, and then we see the Remick down here to the south. Sorry, my cursor again is small, so let me use a bigger pointer here. So here's the Nelligan shear zone. We see the Remick down here. We see the Doda as well down here. And these are cross-cut by north-south, more or less north-south structures. And sometimes where you see these north-south intersections is where you find the deposit. The Nelligan deposit was in this area, for example. So there's a possibility of finding other gold deposits along these structures. And as a result, this will obviously be blue sky, but you can drill in these areas here to potentially find another project. It's higher risk drilling at that point, but if you find another deposit, obviously that is extremely good for all shareholders. So just to summarize, I guess, there's a 10,000 meter drill program that's planned to be drilled here this year. Its goal is to expand the resources even beyond what we have now. There'll be some exploration drilling done as well. And IAMGOLD is also planning to do a bit of work on the metallurgy as well. The assumption here for the resource was 83% based on some of the work that was done so far. And the goal this year will be to do a bit more work on the metallurgy here, so that we can expand that. Improve upon recoveries, and which will only improve the economics of the project. I think that's pretty much it for now. Let me go to the sort of the questions here and see how I can best answer them. So someone pointed out the sort of the lower grade of the deposit. Now, the point to make here is that if we go back to this screen, is that the lower grade is a function of the cutoff grade. So the cutoff grade is determined by the economics of the project. Obviously, if you're mining, say, at a 0.5 cutoff grade, that defines a particular pit for the deposit. And if you lower the cutoff grade, or if you can mine just outside of that pit, for example, and still do it economically, you will do it. Doesn't matter if the grades are lower, they're still economic. So that's the reason why this happens here. The economics of the project allow for a lower cutoff grade. So you go for that lower cutoff grade and you add additional ounces that are profitable. And if you think about it, these are ounces, from when you go from 0.5 to 0.35, for example, you're adding ounces that are effectively gravy on top of, your capital cost is already there at the 0.5. You're not necessarily increasing your capital cost to get to those additional ounces between the 0.5 and the 0.35. So that's sort of the general thinking on this. And obviously, if gold prices increase or economic conditions increase, you can lower the cutoff grade even further. So my apologies here. So the grade of the deposit is a function of the cutoff grade. And likewise, if you're concerned about that and you think that it should be, you should mine a higher grade, you can still see that even at a 1 cutoff grade, 1 gram cutoff grade, you still have 2.5 million ounces here that are over, my apologies, that are over 1.6 grams per ton. So no matter how you look at this project, it is robust. So sorry, I'm just looking at the next question here. There's a lot of questions. I get questions every now and then about, is it possible for someone to come in and buy out Vanstar at a low price? A stink bid for that, for argument's sake. And I was an investment banker for a long time. I focused on M&A. Actually, I did quite a bit, including some hostile takeovers. And I think what shareholders of Vanstar are the ones who will determine what happens to Vanstar. That's the bottom line. So no one can come in here and do a stink bid and win if the shareholders don't like it. It's impossible. You know, a hostile, that basically means that management and board don't want the deal to happen. And if you know, the bids, that would be in a sort of a takeover bid scenario, for example. And in that situation, that offer goes directly to shareholders and bypasses management and board, and it's the shareholders that decide. If they don't like the bid, it will not be successful. So no one can sell this company out from under the shareholders without the shareholders agreeing to it. It's just an impossible situation. Most hostile bids don't win. I actually I can't remember the last time I've seen one win. They're very rare. Typically, they might start out in a sort of a hostile manner, but end up in a friendly situation if we get to a point where you know, the bid makes sense for shareholders. From the board and management perspective, we're not going to do a bad deal for our shareholders. I think a concern about being taken out at a low price or low valuation is not realistic. And we're also not in trouble. You know, we have $2.8 million in the bank still. We don't have to go to market anytime soon. So we are, you know, well positioned, and we can basically, you know, survive any market here for the next number of years. Someone asked next steps for Bousquet. At Bousquet, we're doing a review of the project right now. We're sort of determining what we want to do as a next step. We do want to do some more work on it. The work that we did last year does show some interesting zones and some potential at depth. And so we are looking at what we would do at depending on what our budget was. So one, we need to determine our budget, and two, determine what we would do given the budget. So we're working on that as we speak, and we will sort of make an announcement on that when we're ready to do it. I don't want to spend too much money on this project if, you know, from the cash that we have. Obviously, we want to protect and make sure that we're still secured from a from a cash point of view. And if we do spend money on it, it'll be you know, sort of a small amount from our existing cash, or if we can raise a bit of flow through at reasonable prices, and I'm not saying at these levels, so don't worry about that. Then we can spend more money on the Bousquet project. So we'll see what the sort of the market does here over the next little while, and then we'll figure out what we do with Bousquet. Again, we want to be careful. We don't want to blow our brains out, you know, drilling or spending money that we don't have. So and we don't want to drain the kitty. So obviously we'll be careful with whatever decision we make on that project, but we will do something on it. You know, sorry, there's a number of questions here, so sorry, just give me a second as I go through them. So there's a question about, you know, IAMGOLD, you know, moving the project forward. You know, and how quickly they're moving it forward. So, you know, from that perspective, IAMGOLD, you know, is advancing the project. They're obviously spending, you know, drilling a 10,000 meter program this year and doing some metallurgical work. You know, thing that to point out is that, like I said earlier, a small amount of drilling can add quite a bit of ounces to this project. So just because a project isn't, you know, drilling say 50 or 80,000 meters a year doesn't mean it's not adding value. In fact, you know, these are sort of targeted drilling programs, and they're very successful. So IAMGOLD has been very good at adding value to this project without spending too much money. Having said that, they are focused on developing their Côté project. So that's from a financial perspective, that's their main goal, which, you know, makes sense. And that project, they've said, will be in production in early 2024. So that's only a year from now. And at that point, they should start generating some cash flow from that project, and they'll have more cash to allocate to other projects. And to me, and this is me speculating, IAMGOLD hasn't said it, but Nelligan is the obvious next project for IAMGOLD to advance as they build more ounces here and improve the add to the quality of the recoveries, for example. Then this will become the stronger focus. It is a large deposit, and I'm confident that this will moved forward, and it will start getting more attention as as the financial situation that IAMGOLD gets freed up effectively. Someone asked about capping of higher grade holes. The holes are capped. I mean, that's a common thing, and when calculating resources to avoid nugget effects, for example. In this case, there are actually very few holes. There are caps that are set on at different levels for different zones. But there are very few holes that are affected by that. And in fact, it actually doesn't really change the amount of ounces to any great degree. So the capping of the resources is not a concern. It's actually, if anything, it makes everything more conservative. But even then, it's not like it changes it wouldn't really change the numbers here to any significant degree. So from that perspective, it's not an issue. Have we been approached for the sale of our shares of Nelligan? Every now and then there's a company that'll come along and want to sort of either propose that we merge or sell our interest. We haven't seen any offers that make sense for us and obviously for the shareholders of Vanstar. So until we do that, we are not considering selling it. If at the property level, IAMGOLD does have a ROFR on that project. So if we did try to sell it, they would have the opportunity to buy it as well. But at the corporate level, anyone could come in and potentially buy out the company. But like I said before, it has to be a deal that makes sense for the shareholders. Shareholders have to vote on this, and they have to agree to sell it. Someone asked about why hold the webinar today when it's a federal holiday in the US. We didn't actually realize it was a holiday in the US until now, but having said that, it also frees up people to attend the webinar, because on work days, a lot of people can't sort of get away from the office to get on the call here as well. So I apologize to those who can't make it because it's a holiday, but at the same time, it actually probably frees it up for other people to make it as well. Sorry, I just got lost in my order of questions here. In terms of promotion, we are always, we Vanstar are always out there promoting the stock, promoting the company, putting the message out there as to who we are, educating people as to what we have in terms of assets, to the value that we bring. We are attending conferences. I'm actually off to one in the next week and a half here. We hold meetings with potential investors and analysts and institutions as often as we can. So we're constantly doing basically marketing campaigns and getting the word out as much as we can. So that's in general something that never ends. So, comments on why why the market may not have reacted to the results. I mean, that's a question for the market, really. We are out there sort of putting the message out as much as we can. We are sort of making sure that as many people as possible are aware of our projects and the assets we have and our current valuation. And all we can do is you can't make someone buy stock, so they have to go back and see recognize the value that we have. I think we do a good job of actually presenting that to people, and then they have to make their investment decisions. So the market is what the market is. I know that in the past year it's been a bit of a tough market for the gold companies. Vanstar has actually held in fairly well compared to other companies in that respect. The market sometimes reacts to news, in different ways. So, there's often situations where people already own the stock and they're just waiting for the news to sell. So that kind of sometimes provides a counteract to the positive news. So I'm confident that as we go along here and that we continue to tell the story and expand sort of the number of eyes on our stock, that we'll get a better reaction here over the coming months. So a couple of questions about insider buying. There are individuals buying the stock. There are I know that there are some of our directors have reported insider filings lately, and so there's always someone out there buying, and obviously family members are there as well. So we have insiders, for example, that may have relatives that are significant shareholders as well and have been buying. So you can't, every director and anyone involved as an insider of the company makes their own investment decisions, and so they will decide when they buy, assuming they're not blacked out. So that's sort of the only comment I can make on that. Not everyone on the board is necessarily wealthy, and even if they are, they have a lot of other investments, and they have to manage their portfolios accordingly, just like anyone else would. So that's I'm not going to push any particular person to buy or sell, for that matter. In terms of investor relations, yes, we do have a strong team. Actually, we have quite a number of people involved in helping us promote the stock, and arranging meetings and arranging setting up conferences and so on. So we do have quite a bit of help here on the investor relations side. So we're doing quite well on that front. So someone asked about what gold price was used for the calculation of the resources. This was done at $1,500 gold, which is the same price that IAMGOLD is using for all its other projects this year. I'm not sure how the gold price is set in particular, but you might remember that in December, around the time that probably the gold price was chosen, the gold price was down to about $1,600 or close to it. In some ways, it doesn't really matter, because the only thing that the gold price affects in the calculation of these resources is it basically changes your cutoff grade. So if you use a higher gold price, for example, you could just justify a lower cutoff grade, which would add some ounces and lower the overall grade. So and likewise, if you use a lower gold price, you'd have to use a higher cutoff grade, which would increase your grade, but lower, decrease the number of ounces. So that's the effect of using different gold prices. And in many ways, it doesn't matter that much, other than if it affects your cutoff grade. So if you think that the gold price should be higher in the calculation, then simply look at what it does. Look at what happens at lower cutoff grades, and that'll give you an answer of where things should be at different gold prices. So someone asked about the western part of Nelligan, and part of it is under a shallow lake. That's true. Let's see here. If we go back to the pit shell, there's a small lake in this area, which I pointed out before. You know, it's not a big lake. It's actually really relatively shallow. And so in this area, that has caused the only effect that does is cause a sort of access issues, so that you can't necessarily get there to drill in the area. There is a lake in sort of in this area here as well that kind of goes along the deposit here. That's also relatively small. If you think about it, when this becomes a mine, we're going to be digging a giant pit here that's much larger than any of these lakes. And when the mine is after it's been mined out and closed and remediated, this itself will become a lake, and it'll become a much larger lake than these little ones that are on top of here. So from the fact that these lakes are there is not it's a technical issue, but it's not an issue that's insurmountable, and it's a sort of a common thing for gold deposits in Canada. So someone asked, how does Vanstar increase shareholder value in 2023? We obviously the deposit at Nelligan will continue to grow with this drill program that is happening. We'll get some further information and further certainty on things with more work done on the metallurgy. We'll have a program on Bousquet as well, and then all of these things add value to the company, and it's a question of the market recognizing that value. I could argue that we have much more value in the market right now than the market recognizes by multiple times even. And but even despite that, we can continue to grow the value within the company simply by adding ounces to the current Nelligan project, which we know we can do. And beyond that, outside of these projects, there's always the possibility of M&A. There are companies like I said, that have shown interest. There's always a possibility of some kind of corporate deal that comes out and that comes along and changes, sort of adds value effectively overnight for the company. You never know when these things can happen, and I'm not saying that any of that is imminent at this point. There's nothing like that. But that is something that we're always looking at as well. Obviously, if a deal doesn't make sense for shareholders, we do not do it. But if it does, then that's something that we'll definitely present. And like I said, you don't know when these things can happen, so it's just a matter of being patient, waiting for the work to get done, waiting for the project to advance. And like I said, like within the next year here, we should see some acceleration. And this is, again, is me speculating. This is not what IAMGOLD has said, but I would expect that we'll start seeing some acceleration of the work done on this project. So in terms of the drill program, someone asked, like, when is it planned to drill? How many are exploratory? So the program will be done over this year, so potentially this winter, and throughout the summer as well. So part of that is determined by access and what you can do in the winter versus the summer and vice versa. This winter it is turning out to be fairly mild, as we all know. So things aren't freezing as much as we expected and or would hope. And so there's certain areas that maybe you can't drill this winter, so you have to go back and do it in the summer. And then obviously there's some certain areas that in the summer that you can't do unless things are frozen. So the program will be adjusted based on the conditions. And but like I said before, there's lots of areas here lots of targets here to focus on. There's all these targets underneath the pit here. that can be accessed and drilled from areas that were drilled previously. And so you can focus your drilling on the areas that you can access. So throughout this year here, we should see some news on this throughout maybe the spring and also into the summer, and towards the end of the summer, we should see some news on this on the drill program. So someone asked if we had the power to put this project into production today, on the actual resource and possible economics, would it be a goal? Like, resources are calculated based on the fact that you know, the resources are economic. So this project, you know, the fact that the resources are being calculated and the pit shell is determined implies that it would be a goal. Obviously, there needs to be more work done. There needs to be more confidence in the resources, and the more economic studies need to be done, a proper feasibility study. So I personally think that this project is going to be a mine. Like and this is me again speculating, so that's the forward-looking statement. But you know, I think it has the economies of scale. It's got you know, it's well disseminated. It's sort of a standard, you know, large scale bulk tonnage type of project. You know, I would think that this project can be built and will be economic. So I'm confident that we'll see that, and we'll see more from economic studies as we go along here in the next couple of years. About the strip ratio on the pit, that number I don't think we have in our news release here, but it might be in the 43-101. I'm not sure when it comes out, but if you look at this here, you can see that, you know, there's a lot of material within the pit here, and not a lot of waste. So you know, you can tell that the strip ratio is relatively low. I guess that's all I can say. It's not a high strip ratio. And like I said, there's still room to grow. You can deepen this pit and increase the strip ratio. There's room to that, and leave it at still sort of normal levels. So it's you know, overall, we're, you know, it's well positioned that way. Actually, if you look at the cross section, for example, you can see how there's not a lot of waste here compared to, you know, if you imagine a deposit that's sort of vertical and narrow, kind of like this one little zone here. You can imagine that all of this outside of that would be waste. And so the deeper you go, the more waste you mine, just to get that little extra at the bottom here. That is not the case with Nelligan. Here we've got basically ore throughout the pit here. So the strip ratio is relatively low, and I wouldn't, you know, I wouldn't worry about it at this point. But we should see a number, I think, in the 43-101 when it does come out. IAMGOLD, are they happy with the progress at Nelligan? I'd say yes, they are. I think you know, the technical people there like the project very much. They see the potential for this to grow even further. I personally think, like I said before, that as Côté gets into production here, much more attention will be put onto this project. It's the, you know, to me, their obvious next project to build, because after Côté, this is, you know, sort of similar in the sense that it's a big bulk tonnage type of project. They'll have, you know, sort of the expertise to build it, and will have, you know, have learned from any you know, missteps, or will, you know, they will have learned from building that other project as well. So I think you know, I think we'll have the benefit of IAMGOLD's experience here when they sort of move forward to advance Nelligan more quickly. Someone asked about the First Nations communities in this area. I actually don't I'm not the best person to answer that question because IAMGOLD is the operator here, so they're the ones who have basically managed all of the First Nations community relations. So that would be a better question for IAMGOLD actually, because I haven't really had any involvement in that particular situation at Nelligan, in the area around Nelligan. Someone asked, what's the NSR value of the project? Sorry, the value of our NSR at Nelligan. The NSR that we have on Nelligan is on a small number of claims. It's 8 claims. I believe they cover about maybe a third of the maybe 25% to a third of the 2019 pit shell. So it's probably maybe 15 to 20% of the overall deposit now. And it's a 1% NSR. So if you want to, calculate a value for it, it's basically 1% of revenue. So 1% of the value of the gold say, let's say 20% or up to 20% of the size of the deposit here. I believe as the deposit grows to the east, that will add to our the claims that contain the NSR. As we go to the west, actually, we're outside of that. So, but you can kind of, determine for yourself what you think the NSR is worth based on sort of, just by simply calculating the ounces that you think are affected by the gold price and then taking 1% of that. So, the question here is, my understanding is Vanstar is carried all the way to production for Nelligan. Is that correct? Could you quickly review the terms and payback? So we are carried all the way to production. So right now, all of the costs that go into the project are covered by IAMGOLD, and we don't have to pay those back. Once a feasibility study is completed by IAMGOLD, the bankable feasibility study, at that point, they will have earned their last 5% in the project. So we'll ultimately be at an 80-20, we'll be at a 20% interest in the project. At that point, we're still carried, but our interest becomes contributory. So what it means is IAMGOLD will pay all of the costs, the capital costs to develop the project, and we will repay our portion of those capital costs from cash flow. So about 80% of our cash flow in the in the early years will go back to paying our portion of the capital, and then it'll and then obviously we'll collect the full 20% once that's paid off. Excuse me. So what it means is that we don't have to raise any more capital to advance Nelligan to production. We don't have to dilute our shareholders. So what you get with us is effectively a free ride all the way to production. Someone asked if IAMGOLD can put the property into inventory and do nothing for years. That's obviously a possibility. There's nothing to stop them from doing that. Having said that, we don't see any signs of that. Obviously, they're drilling another 10,000 meters this year. They're doing some more. Metallurgical work. So unless you see the gold price fall by half or something like that, I don't see work on this project going to decreasing from where it is today. So is it possible that they do that? It is possible they can do it, but I don't see them doing that because there would be no advantage to doing that unless for some reason it wasn't an economic, it wasn't economically beneficial to them. And the only reason I see that happening is if the gold price falls considerably from where it is today. Someone said stock value. I'm not sure what they mean by that. Maybe it's a question about what's the project worth relative to our share price. It's hard to put a value on it at this stage because of we don't have the economics around it yet, but you can imagine that this is a large project. It's going to be on the order of billions of dollars for both say the cost to build it but also the value of it. So if you're talking about a project that's that's valued on the order of $1 billion, and you translate that to our ultimate interest in this project, then that's worth something north of 10 times where we currently are trading. So like I said, this is a stock that's worth waiting for. You don't know, we do know that it's worth a lot more than where we're trading right now. And you don't know what event or what particular events might actually cause the market to all of a sudden realize the value we have. So it's one that you basically buy and hold and wait for the value to get created and the market to recognize it. So when will mining start? In this case, we need obviously we're going to continue to drill. We need to define the size of this deposit. So the work this year will focus on, like I said, expanding the resources even further. I wouldn't be surprised, and again, IAMGOLD hasn't said anything on that front, but I wouldn't be surprised that maybe after this year or potentially the next season of drilling that attention starts being taken towards determining the economics of this project. So maybe it goes to some kind of PEA or maybe even a feasibility study, and that can take a number of years. So by the time that you're ready for production, you might be, say, 5 years out or something like that. Now, again, I'm speculating. I'm just sort of giving an order of magnitude. But it's not something that will be in production, say, next year, but it's something that can be moved towards production over the next couple of years here. Is there a possibility for an underground mine here with grades increasing at depth? Right now, this project is only being looked at as an open pit. We do see sort of higher grades here at depth, but the grades are still on the order of say 1.5 grams to 2 grams in that ballpark. So you see that in pockets. So that may not be enough to justify an underground operation here. But having said that, you never know what you find as you drill deeper here. So whether this ultimately becomes an underground mine after the open pit is done will be determined by other exploration work that's done as we drill deeper here. I was going to say, I think the first thing you do is actually see how much deeper you can bring the pit down before you start thinking about underground mines. And then if you do get to underground, that'll be sort of towards the end of the mine life for this project anyway. So we're talking about something that'll be 15, 20 years from now. So, and I think that's pretty much it. What percentage of Vanstar do insiders, family, and friends own? Are there funds who own the stock? There's, I think the case showed up. The case is a Quebec institution, and they are registered as owning about 5 million shares, I think, of Vanstar. I'm not sure if they still own that or not, but they're sort of the one that we are aware of. Beyond that, we have a number of individuals that each own significant portions of this. So, probably with half a dozen calls, I can talk to people that have influence or control over probably 30% of the stock, something like that. And in terms of insiders with family, we're probably talking about on the order of 5 to 10% of the stock. Sort of in that order of magnitude. Have there been drill holes drilled? Have there been drill holes drilled west of Renard? I think is what, or in Renard West. So there are drill holes in Renard in the west. These are the ones that we see over here. So this was an extension of the 2019 pit. So this is all the western, what we call the western extension. So there are holes out here, and there may be more added. I'm not sure, depending on what IAMGOLD determines to do with this 10,000 meter program. There may or may not be more holes drilled here this year, but this is an area that could be drilled and expand upon the pit as well. So that is definitely an area that where resource additions could be added. Someone asked about the distance to the Northern Superior Falcon Zone. I think the boundary of our property is roughly, I think, another 500 meters from this western hole here, so probably around here somewhere. And then the Northern Superior ground would start, after that. So. And I think their Falcon Zone is not too far away. So it's probably a kilometer or so past our furthest west hole here. From what I see that they have is they have some fairly narrow, higher grade zones. So it looks different than what we see here at Nelligan. But that's generally where they are. So we've got maybe another 500 meters here to the boundary. I guess that's pretty much it for the questions here. I think I got them all. I'm not sure, but if anyone has any questions, feel free to give me a call anytime. I'm happy to talk through anything you may want to know. So I think with that, I think we're pretty much done the webinar. And if, like I said, feel free to give me a call if you have any questions. I think my number is on the press releases or accessible. If you leave worst case, if you leave a message at the at our sort of general phone number, I will get that as well. Okay. Thank you very much for your time, everyone. And like I said, feel free to reach out if you need anything. Thanks again.